Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Training camp gets underway in about a week down at the Greenbrier. Browns will go through some unpadded workouts, and then they'll get into the pads and get into training camp for 2024. NFL Network's Tom Pelissaro. This is from the Rich Eisen Show. What needs to happen for the Browns to be factors in 2024?
I don't think that this is, breaking any news here, but it's time for them to get return on investment from Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
Guy has played very little football over the last 3 seasons. Sat out the entire 2021 season while in a contract dispute. There were allegations surfacing, but it was about he wanted out. I shouldn't say a contract dispute. They'd already re-signed him, but he wanted to go someplace else. They didn't feel like they could trade him at that point. Didn't play that entire year. 2022 serves, I believe it was an 11-game suspension. Plays 6 games down the stretch. Comes out last year, ramping up. Plays the best game he's ever played. Turns out he's playing through a completely busted up shoulder and misses the rest of the year. You need Deshaun Watson to play like a guy who's making $46 million a year.
With that, let's welcome in Quincy Carey, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. And Quincy, they just need to play. They need him to play better, right? That I won't argue. Some of it has been that he's been hurt.
Honestly, they just need him to play. I don't know what to make of if he needs to play better or not. I think that's the issue that we are at with Deshaun Watson. I don't know if he's just a dude who's been playing in and out of the lineup, less than 6 games, sometimes 2, coming back, playing 1, getting injured again. I don't know if that sample of games there is good enough for me to make any determination on where he is positive or negative. I just need to see him play. What I do have to lean back on is what he did when he was playing consistently in the league, but that was a long time ago. So I think with Deshaun Watson, he just needs to play. We need to see what it is, because we're not really at the point to where I can make a determination on what this is and what this is going to be for the Cleveland Browns, because we just don't have great information, because the sample that we have is just not great.
So here's why some of the national people are questioning what they're questioning. This is from Super Bowl Nation, SBNation.com. On target rate, in 2020, 80.8, 2023, 67.1. Now remember, he was hurt and didn't play a lot of games in 2023. So I couch it with that. 0 to 10 yards in the air, 84% in 2020, 71%. 20 yards in the air, 58% in 2020 to 42%. Sack rate when pressured, it's about the same, 20.2 to 20.7. Time to throw, had more time to throw in 2023. On target rate when pressured, and you see it was 68%, almost 69% in 2020, 60.4%. Couple of things. As you mentioned, in and out of the lineup, so the mechanics are kind of a mess. And again, he's played 12 games in the last 3 years, parts of 12 games.
Yeah, and in particular with that kind of comp, it's kind of a difficult one to make, because you're comparing a 16-game season that he played in Houston to what is essentially a 5-game sample in Cleveland. One of those games he had a season-ending injury in. Another one of those games he left because of injury, and another one of those games he's returning from injury. And also, I believe in the Titans game, he was playing through significant injury. So it's going to look like that if you compare any player's sample of what they did a year where they were completely healthy to a year where they played 5 games and were in and out of the lineup because of health. So again, it's hard for me to draw any conclusion from that. I can see how somebody can read that, glance at it, and be very concerned. But when you really start to break down what information is actually being compared, you start to see the flaws in that comp and why that's not as one-to-one as that chart makes it out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely fair, and it's absolutely an objective way to look at it. But that's how people that want to drive the narrative that, oh, he's a bottom 10 quarterback from the, he's a bottom third. That's what they're using to drive that narrative. So we'll move on from that. This is interesting. This is from Warren Sharp, Sharp football. Most expensive offenses in the NFL in 2024. The Browns are the most expensive. $191 million, just ahead of the Rams. Chiefs are at $170. Cowboys $158.7. Falcons $151.5. And that's not all Deshaun Watson. Now it's whatever, 46, whatever it is. Offensive line is extremely expensive for the Browns. I think four of the five make 10+ million.
Yeah, one of them is going to probably be sitting the bench all year in Jack Conklin. That's something that I don't think has been talked about enough this offseason. Like we focus so much on the $46 million that Deshaun Watson has made, but there's a lot of money going into that offensive line based on what they did in 2020. And that offensive line has not been the same as they were in 2020. And you can argue that they've kind of been coasting on that reputation the last couple of years, because last year, I don't think even before all of the injuries went down on an offensive line, that they were playing at an especially high level at the start of the year. So that's where I would really have to microscope on, hey, is this offensive line living up to expectations? Because we have not seen the same Wyatt Teller. Joe Bitonio is great, but Joe Bitonio is getting older. It's starting to show. He's had back injuries. He doesn't anchor or push as well as he once did. We have questions all the time about Jed Wills. We like DeJuan Jones, but DeJuan Jones is young. Jack Conklin is unreliable to stay on the field. And then you have Ethan Posick, who's held it down pretty well at that center spot. But there's a lot of questions for what is usually talked about as one of the best units in the NFL. And we have to see if that they're going to live up to that expectation of them, because I see a lot of issues there with that offensive line that could potentially pop up.
Yeah, without question. You mentioned the two guards are getting up there in age, and football, especially on the line, is a young man's game. The other thing that I would throw out there, if they tweak this offense and they're putting more motion and more window dressing, are you getting rid of the ball quicker? I mean, you're still going to want to run the football. Can you find younger, more affordable offensive line?
And also, if you are tailoring this offense around Deshaun Watson, we got to be honest about it. At his best, there's some strengths and weakness, right? We talk about this with Joe Burrow. He's going to hold on to the ball longer. He's going to blow his depth in the pocket because he's trying to stretch out a play. So it's going to make it harder on your tackles. Like Deshaun Watson is in that class of quarterback who he can game change, he can play make, but he's also going to make your life harder on the offensive line. And if you're trying to spread it out, go 3 wide, more 11 personnel, that means you're going to have less tight ends in. That means you're going to have less help on the offensive line, which means you're going to leave these guys on more of an island. So there's a situation where the offensive line is not going to have that nice cushion that they had. Remember, we were all talking about 12 and 13 personnel, right? They're not going to have that same amount of cushion that they used to have when they were running the old system. Now they're going to be left more on the island, and you can argue the play has not been what it has been in years past. And that's where I'm like, you got to pay attention to that, see if that's going to be a storm to come up for this season, if this offensive line is going to be good, because it's not a great spot for them already. And I don't think they've been playing the greatest either. That's where I'll really be focused on.
So ESPN did their top 10 position group rankings from the votes of NFL executive coaches and scouts. They went to cornerbacks today. And so Patrick Surtain from the Broncos was number 1. The Browns' Denzel Ward checks in at number 2. Last year he was number 9 in the ranking. This year he is number 2, ahead of Sauce Gardner, L'Jarius Sneed, Jalen Ramsey, Trenton McDuffie, Jair Alexander, Jalen Johnson. Weatherspoon from the Seahawks is 9, and Stingley Jr. from the Texans is 10. NFL personnel evaluator about Ward. Fast, fluid, upper-tier coverage skills, high football IQ, can create ball production in man or zone, but can match up against just about any number 1 receiver due to his size and speed. Elite movement skills to cover in the slot when asked to do so. There was an honorable mention that had 4 or 5, and then a group of about 6 to 8 that had also receiving votes. In the also receiving votes category was Martin Emerson, of the Browns as well. But Ward, number 2. I'm surprised he was that high. I don't disagree with it, but I'm surprised that he checked in ahead of Sauce Gardner and a couple of the other big name guys?
Well, those guys are big names, and they are great corners and doing what they're doing. But I think it gets forgotten when we talk about, because we talk about Miles so much, and Miles is great. But Denzel Ward is as important to the Browns defense being able to do the things that they can do as Myles Garrett. Like when Denzel Ward wasn't in there those couple of weeks on the West Coast trip, the Browns really felt it, because then you can expose that, hey, Martin Emerson doesn't have the greatest long speed, or Greg Newsome, he doesn't really explode out of his breaks. Well, he doesn't do well with wide receivers who can explode out their breaks. So you can really take advantage of him on some dig routes. But when Denzel Ward is in there, he kind of erases all those problems and elevates everybody in that secondary because of it. You get the best out of Grant Delpit because you have Denzel Ward. You get the best out of Martin Emerson because you have Denzel Ward. You get the best out of JOK because you have Denzel Ward, because his elite ability in coverage. And also, this gets slept on. I think this has been something that's been slept on since he came out of Ohio State. He's a good run defender as well, like a very willing tackler. It's sometimes too willing, because sometimes he gets in trouble tackling tight ends, he gets hurt. But really willing tackler, really aggressive on screens, and pretty sure of a tackler for somebody in as small as a frame as he has. And when he's out there, it really allows everybody else to do what they're good at, because he's just good at so many things, right? If you have a slot guy that maybe that you know that Greg's not going to do a great job of covering, he doesn't have to worry about that. Why? Because you can just put Denzel Ward on him, right? That is the great ability. You don't have to worry about Jamar Chase because you have Denzel Ward. And that, I think, is what talent evaluators value. I think that's what coaches value. Those guys that you mentioned, great cover corners. They can do all those things, but they are great at that. Denzel Ward is great at so many different things and so important to what the Browns like to do, that when you're trying to plan something against that Browns defense, you start to notice and you go, that dude is a problem, because now we can't take advantage of these things we want to in the game plan because he's just destroying it.
All right, so that finishes up the position groups. These are teams with the most in the top 10, according to the NFL executive coaches and scouts. Jeremy Fowler tweets this out. Niners were number 1 with 9. Lions, Chiefs, and Ravens had 7. The Browns, along with the Texans and Eagles, had 6, tied for 5th. So it was Ward, Garrett, and Njoku, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Chubb, and Bitonio. And when you look at it in terms of that, it makes it pretty clear they have one of the better rosters in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a great job drafting and developing even without first-round picks, right? And that is something that should be lauded. They did a great job developing guys, right? A lot of the guys that you mentioned weren't guys that they drafted, but were guys that they developed. They got the best out of David Njoku and other names like that. JOK is somebody who had his best year in this offense, or not offense, defense, under Kevin Stefanski, under Jim Schwartz, under that leadership. So this just goes to show you, and look, we've talked about it all the time, Dave, on the other side of it. When you're constantly changing out coaches, when you're constantly changing out visions, plans for these guys that you draft, you're never going to get the best out of them. But now the Browns are in the opposite position, right? They could draft these players or get these players that were drafted before them, or trade for somebody like Jerry Jeudy, and know that they have a good chance to get the most out of them that they're capable of, because they have a good locker room situation, they have good leadership, they have veteran players in that locker room, and they have the job security to have a long-term plan for a guy like Jerry Jeudy, who they traded for, signed to a 3-year contract, because they see a plan for him to contribute and be the player that he can be in their system.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage tonight. I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Can you believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I know everybody, especially the national media, is making a big deal out of the third tight end situation. I know that's basically because we've already got a really good roster, and that's the only place they can seem to potentially find a hole. Is that as important as getting more production out of the second tight end? Last year, Stefanski used the tackle as a tackle-eligible blocking tight end. It seemed to work for him pretty good. I know Belichick used that quite often, got several touchdowns out of Mike Vrabel out of that position. What do y'all think about this situation? Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I think the concern with the depth at tight end is what if something happens where David Njoku has to miss 2, 3, 5 games? That's the concern.
My thing is with that, David Njoku is not somebody that if you had a good backup, you would replace him and do everything that David Njoku does. David Njoku is a special player. So losing him, I mean, that's just going to stink. Like, you're just going to have to make an adjustment. But I don't think that adjustment exclusively has to happen in the tight end room. Like, if David Njoku's not there to get 150 targets, you're not going to be like, all right, Jordan Akins, step up. You're getting 150 targets now, right? It's going to be a different committee. Maybe you expect more out of Jerry Jeudy now, or maybe you expect more out of Elijah Moore or Cedric Tillman, and they filled the gaps there. So I don't think it's as simple as looking at it as just tight end, right? If David Njoku goes out, then you would just use Jordan Akins as a regular tight end. It's more about looking at it as a entire room of pass catchers. And that's what the Browns' plan is. If David Njoku does go down, or if somebody does go down, you're going to replace it by having other players step up in different positions to fill the void of David Njoku, because you're not going to fill that with Jordan Akins or any backup tight end available, or even not available. There's no backup tight end. It's David Njoku.
Right. I guess the thought is, though, you're going away from something that was a strength, and now you just kind of you got to rework it around what you have is kind of what and I think that's one of the reasons why they haven't gone out and signed a veteran tight end. There's nobody that fits the profile of what they're looking for.
Well, I don't know how important tight ends were to the Cleveland Browns in years past, right? We talked about it when they had Austin Hooper in here. They barely used David Njoku, right? Like, how important is that second tight end to what the Browns want to do? We didn't really see Jordan Akins as much as we thought that we would see Jordan Akins. Like, they just don't run that much 12 personnel anymore, and they really haven't since 2020 when they were going 12, 13 heavy. So I don't know how much that backup tight end matters. Like, it's not like Harrison Bryant was making a big dent in what the Browns want to do. And they're going to do tackle eligible. They have Mike Vrabel, who the caller mentioned, who knows about tackle eligible in a lot of different ways you can use it. The Browns know how to use it. They've had Nick Harris and did a lot of interesting things with tackle eligible last year. I think that's going to be their plan. They have a fullback on the roster right now. That's essentially another tight end too that you can use. There's a lot of different ways you can go around replacing a third tight end or getting to a second tight end. That's not necessarily about having the best second tight end possible. And also a question I would like to ask, just like people in general, because I don't know the answer to it. Who has a good backup tight end?
Yeah, none of them are popping into my head. It seems like the 49ers always have a guy that they can go to when Kittle gets banged up, and you know, the Chiefs always have a guy that seems to catch a couple of touchdowns because everybody pays attention to Kelsey. But it's not like, I'm with you.
Yeah, the 49ers have Juszczyk, right? That's their fullback that they usually go to whenever Kittle's not in there. But like, as far as Kittle's backup himself, like, you feel it whenever Kittle's not out there. Just because those kind of tight ends, they're not easy to find. There's like 7 of them in the league.
All right, this is ranking players that are over 30 years old, 30 best. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver of the Dolphins, number 1. Trent Williams, offensive tackle of the Niners, 2. Chris Jones, defensive tackle for the Chiefs, is 3rd. They have Amari Cooper, 19th. Since entering the league in 2015, he's quietly become one of the steadier producers in the game, reaching a 1,000-yard mark in 7 of those seasons. That puts him among the league's elite. Second most to Kelsey in that span, behind only Mike Evans. He's tied with Kelsey in that span. 26th, Joel Bitonio. Bitonio is about to match Thomas, as in Joe Thomas, in seasons played, 11 with 144 regular season games under his belt.
Ooh.
Could get within spitting distance of the Hall of Famers' total of 167. That ranks 6th all-time in Cleveland. Yeah, that's why if Bitonio played any position, if he played tackle, we'd be like, yeah, he's on his way to getting that gold jacket. And he still may be, but it's so hard for a guard to get there. Yeah, both of those guys, they play like they're younger than 30. You're starting to see a little bit with Bitonio where he's missing some games and he's slowing down a little bit. I guess you could say the same with Cooper, but Cooper, man, he plays through injuries all the time.
Yeah, Coop's been like that pretty much his whole career. Even going back to Alabama, he was always playing through something. So I think that's just part of the territory with Amari Cooper. With Joe, yeah, it's a little bit more concerning, but like it's considerably more tread on the tires for Joe Bitonio. Like that's not the same over 30, right? We talk about him playing the same amount of seasons as Joe Thomas, and what Joe was 4 games into that season before he retired. So it's something to look out for. Joe Bitonio, like he can't have many more years, especially playing guard and as physical as the Browns have played over the last 4 years. But it's a tremendous career, and I don't know if he'd be first ballot. It's hard to be a guard and be first ballot when you weren't like a top 15 pick in your draft, right? You didn't come in with that hype and people wanting you to be that good and live up to it. So it's going to be difficult for him. I think maybe second, third, he should be in there. He should get consideration because this is a guy who was one of the best guards in football for pretty much his whole career. And it's crazy to think that somebody drafted in 2014 to me is now seen as getting up there in age, Dave. I don't know about you, but when they said he played the same amount of seasons as Joe Thomas, I did not like that one.
There you go. This is from CBSSports.com. Potential training camp holdouts, they go Amari Cooper. An important data point for Cooper might be the maximum value of Mike Evans' contract. Evans, who turns 31 in August, signed a 2-year contract for as much as $52 million in March. The $11 million of incentives and salary escalators make the deal worth up to $26 million per year. Evans has $35 million of guarantees, which is $29 million fully guaranteed at signing. That's if I'm Amari Cooper's side, I could see wanting that kind of deal.
I think he should want more than what Mike Evans got, right? I don't think Mike Evans got a great deal at all. Honestly, I think he should get like $26 million a year if I'm Amari Cooper, and you should want 3 years with at least 2 guaranteed. I think that's the minimum that you accept if you're Amari. And I don't know if the Browns are going to get there, but I also think Amari at the end of the day is a businessman, and he's going to play, right? He's going to try to get the most out of this season because he knows if the Browns aren't going to extend him, then he's going to be able to hit the market and get a pretty big number because the Browns aren't likely to franchise tag him. So I think Amari will eventually play. As far as training camp goes, I'm going to be honest, I don't think Amari's going to show up to training camp until Deshaun Watson's going full go at practice, right? Because if you're Amari, it probably only makes sense to come once that is the case. And that's just pure speculation on my part on what I would expect a veteran to do in that situation. Given that the starting quarterback, we don't know how much throwing they're going to let him do in training camp at the beginning of it. And if you're Amari Cooper, you've been in the league for a very long time, almost as long as Joe Bitonio, right? We talked about it in the segment before. And at that point, camp kind of gets heavy on you, and I would wait until it makes sense for you to be there. And the chemistry between him and Deshaun Watson, even with the offense change, has always been strong over the last couple of years. So I think he's going to come into the season with that in mind, but I don't know how much training camp he's going to participate in.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take another timeout. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, the report is the Browns are looking for Aiyuk, which would be terrible because he's a cancer in the locker room. They done already told him that he's gone. He's all on TikTok, damaging the team. You don't need no guy like him on the team when you have a guy like Amari Cooper that's a locker room presence everyone loves. Hopefully, the Browns can straighten the situation out. Thanks, Dave.
As always, appreciate all of your voicemails. Quincy, I hesitate to say somebody's a locker room king. The first you've heard of it, of anything negative about Aiyuk is when he wants a new contract. And I get it. I mean, he's looking at guys that produce like him that are getting 30, 35 million. I think he's on his tag to make 14.1 million. And I get to the average fan that's a boatload of money. It's about half or less than half of what his market value is. And he's got a finite number of years to make money.
Yeah, I wouldn't call Brandon Aiyuk a locker room cancer because, one, we never talk about the 49ers having locker room issues. They went back-to-back NFC Conference Championship games. So when was he a locker room cancer? It seems very convenient that people are like saying this now about him. And they said the same stuff about Deebo Samuel, and that locker room is fine, right? Like they didn't just devolve. So I don't buy into those kind of narratives about players. I usually find those to be garbage. But when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, I do think there are some questions that we should ask about Brandon Aiyuk in the Cleveland Browns as far as like what this situation is, as far as his effectiveness on the field.
Yeah, that's fair. And you know what? Again, Amari Cooper has done nothing but come and play through injuries and produce here. So I get why, we've called him the Nick Chubb of the wide receiver class, and he just shuts up and produces. And there's something that's appealing about that because there aren't a lot of wide receivers that go out and do that.
Well, and also the bringing in Brandon Aiyuk argument isn't, hey, we're just going to trade for Brandon Aiyuk for like a draft pick and bring him in and add him to a core that already has Amari Cooper. We're talking about getting Brandon Aiyuk and trading Amari Cooper to make that happen. And that's where I start to ask some questions because, one, if the 49ers were willing to do that, that would mean in order for the Browns to win that trade, they would have to be smarter than the 49ers are about a player that they drafted and developed. And I don't think that's a good bet to make, right, when you're doing a trade. There's something that the 49ers see on the field with Brandon Aiyuk or with wide receivers in general that makes them think that he's not worth $30 million. He's worth $26 million. Well, that's about what Amari Cooper's worth. So, like, if you're trading draft compensation for a player who could end up being a very similar player to the one you already have just to get younger down the line, but more expensive, is that really a good trade to make? I know we want to get excited about like a big blockbuster name being added in there, but I don't know if Brandon Aiyuk is a big enough upgrade over Amari Cooper to make sense to not only trade for, but to sign to a $30+ million deal at wide receiver. And also, while I'm excited that wide receivers are getting this money, at some point we got to ask ourselves the question: what team has signed a wide receiver to $30 million contract, and it's made them a championship contender?
Yeah,
I can't name it.
No, I can't either. And
the Chiefs traded their $35 million wide receiver and won 2 back-to-back. Yeah. At some point, we got to ask this question: hey, man, is Tyreek Hill going to make somebody into Pat Mahomes? Because that's the dream of signing somebody at $35 million. And so far, the answer with Tua Tagovailoa is no. You cannot just turn your quarterback into Pat Mahomes if you have a high-quality wide receiver. Devontae Adams been out there in Las Vegas for how long? We haven't thought about them since they made that trade.
Yeah, no, those are two very valid points. Staying on wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, and I know you've asked, there's two questions with this, both of them that you've dealt with on your show. Could he be the Browns' biggest X factor, Jerry Jeudy? And then also from you got a Q&A, can Jerry Jeudy be a CeeDee Lamb type of wide receiver?
Or a Brandon Aiyuk type wide receiver, because they're very similar types. And this goes into a question. I would love to get Truth Serum into Andrew Berry in a setting where he does not have to speak to the media, right? And ask him this question. How far off do you think Jerry Jeudy is potential-wise from being what Brandon Aiyuk is? I think the answer might surprise some people, right? Because the sentiment on Jerry Jeudy is pretty low. But if you would have asked that question 2 years ago, Dave, a lot of people would have said, yeah, there's a very high chance of him being a very similar player to Brandon Aiyuk. So I think that also factors into it, is that Andrew Berry believes, hey, we put Jerry Jeudy in the right system with the right quarterback, with the right expectations in the right city, he can flourish just like Brandon Aiyuk flourished when he got into the right system, in the right thing with San Francisco. Remember, Brandon Aiyuk was in the doghouse for San Francisco in 2021. It wasn't until the whole contract situation with Deebo Samuel happened that he got the time to flourish. So if your argument is he hasn't been as big as a star as Brandon Aiyuk, well, now he's getting put in a position where that might be possible, and maybe they feel like something similar is possible with Jerry Jeudy.
So this is from Sports Illustrated, predicting which NFL rookies from each team will have the biggest impact this season. They say for the Browns, it's Amari Thrash. Quite a bit of uncertainty once you get beyond Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy on the depth chart, and Thrash could end up being an effective slot receiver at the NFL level. Had over 1,100 yards, averaged over 18 yards per catch at Georgia State in 2022. That was before he went to Louisville. And it's going to be awfully tough for him to earn reps at wide receiver. You know, he's got to get by Elijah Moore. He's got to get by Cedric Tillman. I don't think he's getting by Jerry Jeudy or Amari Cooper. But I do see some upside to Thrash.
The thing is, wide receiver is one of those few positions where you do put four of them on the field at the same time, right? Yeah. So there's more opportunity to see the field for a wide receiver deep down on the depth chart than there is for literally any other position, maybe outside of corner, on a football team. So there's a chance there for Jamari Thrash. And I think the best thing for Jamari Thrash going is anytime he was not in Louisville, he looked like a third-round pick to me. But it's just the Louisville tape makes you feel like that's a fifth-round pick. So the question is, was it the competition in the ACC that made him look that way, or was it the broken hand he was dealing with while he was at Louisville that makes him that way? Because when I watch him at the Senior Bowl, I go, wow, I like that player. He's going to be a pretty good player. When I watch him at Georgia State, I go, wow, I like that guy. He's going to be pretty good. Just the Louisville tape makes you wonder if he can catch the ball consistently, and I wonder how much of that had to do with the broken hand, because it feels like it has something to do with it.
Well, I would think trying to catch a football thrown to you pretty hard with a broken hand is not it's not something I want to do a lot of, I guess is the best way to put that. Quincy Carrier and I can step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at the biggest holes for each team in the AFC North. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. This is from CBSSports.com. Every team's biggest roster, whole or question mark, entering the 2024 season. So in the AFC North, they say the Ravens is the offensive line shuffle. The Bengals, running back / tight end. The Browns, quarterback. And the Steelers, quarterback / wide receiver. Yeah, I can see that. You know, we've kind of talked about that with the Browns as far as what are you going to get with Deshaun Watson. I don't think an offensive line shuffle is something you want to deal with. Running back tends to make me think you're going to be one-dimensional. And if you're talking about quarterback and wide receiver, you're definitely one-dimensional. You're running the football, being the Steelers.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say about the Browns. And yeah, the Browns, you go into the season and you're wondering, okay, is Deshaun Watson going to be Deshaun Watson? And let's be honest about that. The Browns' questions at quarterback are not the same as Pittsburgh's question at quarterback, right? Like, it's not two of the same thing. The Browns are wondering, hey, is this guy who's under 30, who was a 3-time Pro Bowler when we traded for him, is he going to play at that same level and be a top 5 quarterback again? And they're wondering, like, hey, can Justin Fields and Russell Wilson do something? Like, those are two different worries at the quarterback position.
First world problems versus third world problems. Are we going to have electricity at our quarterback, or can we have the Taj Mahal light up?
It's like asking yourself, hey, will this BMW that I bought start up and run well this year and not have to go to the shop a ton of times? Or it's like, hey, man, I need a jump every time I start this Ford Focus. That's the difference of, like, hey, man, they got quarterback questions, both of them. It's two different classes of quarterback issues. But yeah, I would say, yeah, the Browns, you got to see what Deshaun Watson is. He has not played enough for me to be confident that he's just going to be the dude that he was in Houston, but he's not played so badly when he's been out there that I'm disillusioned about that being true either. Like, I want to know what he's going to do this year. Offensive line is something that I would throw in there for the Browns. Like, it's a slight concern because I am a little bit concerned about what a new offense and this offensive line being in the state that it's going to be in. But again, let's talk about a first world problem, because as much as I complain about the Browns offensive line, there's not a single guy on there that wouldn't start for somebody else. And you got Jack Conklin potentially as your 6th man. There's a lot of people who would kill to have the problems the Browns have on the offensive line standpoint, and at quarterback, and at running back, right? We talk about with running back, oh yeah, will Nick Chubb be Nick Chubb again? Like, the Browns' problems are considerably less depressing than they were 10 years ago. Like, if you just compare it to what the roster looked like 10 years ago, it was like, hey, man, we going to start Jeudy again? This is a different world that we living in. Like,
yeah, I'm with you. And I like Justin Fields. Let me say that about the Steelers quarter. I'm not a big Russell Wilson guy. I think if you let Justin Fields play, I think he figures it out, especially with a competent offensive coordinator like Arthur Smith. That makes this one really, I just don't agree with this. This is FanDuel's NFL Power Rankings. Chiefs 1, I don't have an issue with that. Ravens 2, 49ers 3, Lions 4, Bengals 5. They have the Steelers 16, the Giants 21, and the Browns 22 ahead of the Colts and the Raiders. I'm not sure what you're. They have the Bears at 15. So I'm not sure exactly how you get that. I think that's incredible.
I know how they got there. I know how they got there. I can look at that list and tell you right now how they got there. They didn't rank teams. They ranked quarterbacks. That's what that ranking is, right? If you look at that list, it's like, okay, maybe like for a tiebreaker, it matters if you're on the better team. But for the most part, that's how you get the Bears at 15, because that person really likes Caleb Williams, right? That's what happens when you have such a quarterback-focused mindset on ranking teams. You put a team that went 11-6 last year with 5 different quarterbacks who did not lose a single starter on the defensive side or offensive side of the ball. And they're just getting back Nick Chubb, by the way. Like, even if you don't believe in Deshaun Watson, they're getting back Nick Chubb. So you let all of that do the math for you, and you somehow come out with this team is now the 22nd team. Who did the Browns lose to drop that far in the rankings? And then you remember, oh, this person was doing a quarterback ranking and saying it was a power ranking. But that's how you get Caleb Williams at 15. Or I bet they put the Chargers in the top 10 because they really like Justin Herbert. I'm not surprised by how that list came out once you start to really evaluate what that person is actually ranking. And we'll see what Deshaun Watson does this year, because if he does play well, I bet you the FanDuel ranking would put him at number 7 all of a sudden. All of a sudden the Browns got better. Ooh, wonder what happened.
All right. So before I let you go, training camp opens a week from today. What are you paying closest attention to early? What do you need to see? And if you see, tell me something that you don't want to see. If you see this, it's not good.
We're going to be having that microscope on Jerry Jeudy, right? I feel like this is going to be the offseason, the summer of a ton of Jerry Jeudy topics on the screen. There are going to be days where Jerry Jeudy looks amazing. There's going to be days where Jerry Jeudy doesn't look great, right? He's going to be going back and forth with an elite secondary. So you really want to see what this change of environment, what this change of offense, change of scenery, change of quarterback play has really done for Jerry Jeudy over the offseason. And if he comes in with the focused mindset and he's really coming in to make plays, because I don't anticipate Amari Cooper is going to be there at the start of camp. More than likely, even if he does, he's a veteran player. He's not going to practice that much. So Jerry Jeudy is going to be put in a position to get a lot of targets during training camp, whether it's Deshaun or Jameis Winston throwing him that ball. And I think that's going to be the main thing we can focus on is, hey, man, what Jerry Jeudy are we going to get? And is he going to start developing the way that people expected him to out of college this offseason during training camp?
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Thank you.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Make sure you check it out. It's always really good. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Nick Karns will join us from the Barking Browns podcast. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Can you believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, Dave. This is Larry from Florida. Been a Browns fan for a very long time. I just hope they don't make the same mistake they made in 1972 when they traded Paul Warfield to the Dolphins and we drafted a quarterback, and that trade cost us the Super Bowl. I sure hope they don't do it to Cooper. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Nick Karns from the Barking Browns podcast. So I am old enough to remember that, Nick. They traded it for a draft pick that turned into Mike Phipps from Purdue, and Mike Phipps never quite amounted to what they did. Now, a couple of things. They traded Warfield after his age 27 year. So he was 3 years younger than Cooper. He's closer to Brandon Aiyuk's age. Having said that, they didn't throw the football as much back then, and Warfield had 11 touchdowns in his age 31 season and was part of the undefeated Super Bowl team of the Dolphins. I don't think that trade's going to happen because I think they're going to want Amari Cooper and a 1 for Brandon Aiyuk, and then the Browns would have to pay Aiyuk in the neighborhood of 30, 32, 35 million, and I don't think they want to do that.
It's a tough situation because you look at it and you say, okay, Amari's coming off of a career high receiving yards. He just set a career high in touchdown receptions the year before. He showed no signs of slowing down. And I do think there's a value in a guy that's already been here and shown that he fits the offensive scheme and fits what you want to do. On the other hand, Amari's 30 this year and Brandon Aiyuk is 26. Brandon was just an all-pro and an offense that certainly features Christian McCaffrey and definitely could air it out more than they did, and still managed to get the all-pro honors despite that. It's a tough situation, but I think when you look at it and you think about giving up more than Amari Cooper, that's my breaking point, especially when you say a first-round pick. That feels like it's like the Browns finally just got their first-round picks back, right? And I think we're seeing how valuable they are and how valuable those rookie contracts and fifth-year options are. So to me, I've seen Amari Cooper do it in Cleveland's offense. I've seen him be productive already. I'm hoping that they extend Cooper.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, I got to believe they find a way to make it palatable for both sides, so that the Browns can live with what they're given, and Cooper happy enough that he's just Amari Cooper. Earlier in the show, we mentioned Denzel Ward ranked second best corner in the NFL in the ESPN survey of executive coaches and scouts. Take a look at these numbers. These are his numbers in man coverage for all cornerbacks with at least 390 snaps. First in missed tackles with none. First in touchdowns allowed with none. Fifth in passer rating when targeted, 45.5. That's why he's ranked second ahead of Sauce Gardner, a young guy and Sauce Gardner's a great cornerback. So he was ranked second. He's really good in man coverage.
Absolutely. I think as far as Denzel Ward goes, the question was never what will he give you when he's on the field. It's just if he would be on the field. And it was really nice to see Denzel have some better health luck this year. I think he missed just like one game, but didn't deal with the concussions notably, as we've seen that in the past. And so I think we know what to expect when Denzel is healthy, and that's quite the luxury to have back there in the secondary.
Without question. And some of the thing is he's fearless playing run defense, and that's why he gets banged up. He's not the biggest guy, and he is a willing tackler on particularly tight ends. So hopefully able to stay healthy again. This is from Dog Pound Daily. One young player on offense and defense that need to step up for the Browns. Defense, they go Siaka Ika, defensive tackle, third-round pick a couple years ago. Offense, they go David Bell, wide receiver, also a third-round pick. Again, it's hard to say that, as a third-round pick, they haven't lived up to what you thought they were. They haven't been given the opportunity, but I guess you could also say they haven't earned the opportunity. It's one of the things that happens when you get a roster that is really good like the Browns have. Young guys have trouble cracking in and getting playing time.
Sure. It's a stark contrast between what we're used to in previous years of Browns drafts when you've got guys going even later than the third round and you're hoping that they'd be immediate impact, significant contributors. And so it's definitely a tough road to get there. Now, we did just talk to Lance Riesland, who has been at Browns camp previously and had said that Siaki really looks like he's lost some weight, and his body definitely looks like he's spent the last year in the NFL, and so that's pretty exciting. I'm definitely hoping that we see more from both guys as we move forward. But it's certainly, especially when you talk about the Browns defensive line, that's a really talented and deep group. That's a tough group to crack. And now it's like the Browns traded for Elijah Moore last year. They traded for Jerry Jeudy this year. You still, obviously Amari Cooper speaks for himself. I mean, that's a top three right there. So I think for any third round pick, for any receiver coming into the Browns group, it's going to be tough to get those snaps because there's a lot of talent ahead of you.
So yesterday we told you a little bit about Glenville High School. They won state championship in Division IV. They presented Deshaun Watson with a state championship ring. And it was at the 7-on-7 that Deshaun Watson hosted. Found out something that wasn't highly publicized. Deshaun Watson paid for Glenville's state championship rings. Ted Ginn Sr. Said, he kind of saw that they needed some help as a city school, and he just went out and did it. Wasn't publicized. They were very appreciative, which is the reason they gave him the state championship ring. And again, Nick, he's done a lot of things, and he does a lot of things that don't get publicized like that. I didn't realize that was the reason. He literally, the city schools have trouble financially, and Ted Ginn does a great job, raising money and doing that. But Watson, made the offer and bought him the state championship rings.
It's a true credit to him. There's no better way to lay some roots in your community and lay a foundation for the future in Cleveland than giving back to this community. And so I thought that was a really classy move by him, and the fact that this is something that didn't come out immediately and wasn't pushed kind of shows the good intentions behind it. So I thought that was really nice to see.
Yeah, the fact, and again, Matt Gould wrote about it in the Plain Dealer, and I know Ted Ginn Sr. really well. So the fact it wasn't publicized means he wanted to do it, wasn't doing it for the publicity because nobody knew about it. Nick Karns and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We'll talk a little bit about some position battles and some unanswered questions for the Browns heading into training camp. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Can you believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
We continue talking Browns with Nick Karns from the Barking Browns podcast. One position battle watch for every NFL team during training camp. This is from Pro Football Network for the Browns. They say defensive tackle. Shelby Harris, Dalvin Tomlinson are likely the starters. Browns could be forced to cut promising players such as Maurice Hurst due to the team's depth at the position. And Nick, of course, they drafted Michael Hall Jr. I think he's going to be more of a kid's only 21, so he's going to be a guy that they bring in pass rushing situations. And again, I know they're deep. I'd be surprised if Maurice Hurst is not on that final 53. The other thing, you can never account for injuries, but Hurst is a guy I know they like, and he was productive before he got hurt.
Right. They gave Hurst the chance to really revive his career, and he largely did it last year. And it really hurt to see him end up getting injured and not be able to finish the season. But when he was on the field, he was a big part of that defensive line and the real bounce back of the defensive tackle position as a whole in Cleveland. So I would be really sad to see Mo Hurst not a Cleveland Brown this year. I want to say it would surprise me not to see him as a member of the Browns on the 53. But it is true that, like, you think about not only drafting Michael Hall, but bringing in Quentin Jefferson as well, who's also been productive. That's a really tough. It's probably the toughest position to crack on the Browns roster right now, because top to bottom, you look at it and you say you've got Dalvin Tomlinson, you've got Shelby Harris, and like you said, you just drafted Michael Hall. I'm not sure how many defensive tackles the Browns are going to keep, but it's going to be it's going to be a camp battle to watch for sure.
Yeah, and think back a couple of years, not last year before. That was a position of weakness. We watched them just get pushed all over the field when they couldn't stop the run. This from Pro Football Network. 5 unanswered questions for the Browns leading up to training camp. Number 1, how will Deshaun Watson look coming back from his shoulder injury? Number 2, how will Nick Chubb look coming back from his season-ending knee injury? Will Amari Cooper show up to training camp? Is 3, how will Jerry Jeudy fit into the offense? Is 4, and what will a defensive encore look like under Jim Schwartz? Those are all very, very valid. And when you look at those, what one are you paying closest attention to?
I think just bundling. One of the biggest themes of last year was all the injuries that the Browns had, and so I guess just in general is both Deshaun and Nick and how they come back from their injuries. Probably Deshaun more so. I think just because the quarterback is so impactful on the offense, and this is they've talked about how this is more of a baseball injury, and they're not sure exactly how Deshaun's going to heal from that. And we did see some encouraging signs when they were there for minicamp, and it was nice to see him air the ball out and that kind of thing. But I think it would be a disservice to where the Browns are going to act like anything else than the quarterback is priority number 1.
The other thing is he hasn't taken a hit yet, and I'm curious. I want to see him take a hit and see. I want him to take a hit, and I want him to pop up and go back and the next play throw 45 yards down the sideline.
Right.
Defensive encore. I'm curious to see year 2. I think, remember, last year's the first year in a defensive system, and they did that. I would think year 2 defense gets a little bit better.
It was really interesting to hear Jim Schwartz talk about that, because I thought he was more candid than he probably needed to be. He said that last year they did not get to implement all of the schemes and everything that he wanted to do just because there was not enough time. And so basically on the way he prioritized it was, let's get really good at one thing rather than trying to spread this out and maybe not be our best. And you're talking about a defense that gave up the least yards per game in the NFL. And so when he mentions that has me excited, because you know what, I don't think it's any secret that the Browns struggled more in zone than they did in man. If that's something that they come into 2024 improved with just how good we've already seen them be in man, the sky's the limit for this defense.
I'm with you. All right, before I let you go, 8.5 win total. Why do you think the Browns? I agree with you. Why do you think the Browns exceed it?
Well, I'm glad we're on the same page here, Dave. You know what? I look at this team and I say, you were fresh off of an 11-win season last year. You had the most salary cap on IR. You were the first team to ever make the playoffs with 4 different quarterbacks making multiple starts each. And that's not even counting the 5th quarterback, because you had already clinched a playoff berth. And I understand that there's questions about Deshaun Watson. To that, I would say that the last 3 games that he played in full were probably his best stretch as a Brown. He didn't throw an incompletion in that second half against the Ravens. I get it. That's a small sample size. But when he finished his season injured, the Browns were still 6-3. They beat the 49ers with P.J. Walker. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was the only AFC North quarterback to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. You saw, Joe Flacco speaks for itself. They had so much success with so many different quarterbacks, and they were down to offensive tackles 5 and 6 at one point. I just think we saw the Browns overcome so much adversity last year. And you look at the roster as a whole and say, their biggest free agent loss was probably Sione Takitaki. They were able to keep just about everybody and add to that. I'm bullish on the Browns. I know I'm a homer, but I think even if you're being objective about it, you still say this is one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. And if you just get a little bit better injury luck than you had last year, you should be one of the better teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you, and that's kind of my rationale. By the law of averages would say you're going to be healthier than you were last year. If not, you've had some incredible misfortune. Nick Karns, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Nick.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Nick Karns, make sure you check him out. Barking Browns podcast. He is one of the hosts of the Barking Browns podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.